Welcome to the Lost and Found. Of course, I am Gail Washington.
And I'm Frankie Kunaho.
Okay, you paused there for a moment. I was wondering if you forgot who you were.
No, actually, I was taking a deep breath because I'm anticipating our topic for today.
Okay. And I'm speaking in a totally different tone right now because I have acquired a new office, which basically is just a room in the library. And I like it because it's enclosed and it's a different perspective. I'm not just looking at curtains in my office at home. But when we left the last show, we were discussing our topic, which would be relationships. And the reason we want to talk about relationships is because we are finding this is a weird season, mainly not for us, because I haven't been in a relationship since the Clinton administration first term. So
Jesus.
I'm exempt. Yes, Lord, pray to him. I am exempt from relationship discussions, only to offer a shoulder to cry on and whiskey when needed. But Frankie, we were talking about this weird season because both of us have received calls or discovery from friends in regards to relationships. What the heck is going on?
Well, you know what? Listen, I've been married, 4 years now.
Yay!
Actually, we just celebrated our 4th anniversary a couple of days ago. And it has just been the weirdest thing that we have been, and I say we, my husband and I have been discovering, because it's not just me discovering, but he's also discovering through his friendships, couples who are just going their own separate way after, a few years of marriage, after many years of marriage.
Decades.
And you know what, listen, I'm always going to bring the spiritual aspect into these conversations, and my very first thought is that the foundation was already rocky, or it became rocky, because I hear an echo.
I'm sorry, that might be me moving. I'm not going to move anymore.
Yeah, start moving, because didn't we talk about active listening last time?
We did.
I cannot actively speak, and you actively listening with the echo. No, but there still seems to be an echo.
Can you hear it? Okay, it might be your phone on that end, because I don't hear an echo over here.
Oh, that's really kind of weird. Oh, there it goes. It's gone.
Okay.
Okay. So, anywho, we have found out that some people that we know and love dearly, who've been married for 20, 30, 40 years,
Wow.
They have gotten a divorce. And what I'm finding really weird about it, and I started talking about the foundation, is that, I'm not saying that my marriage is perfect, far from it. We fight like cats and dogs at times, and it gets a little bit crazy. However, we have made a commitment that God is always going to be first. And I know a lot of people frown and look all crazy, like, really, what? Yeah, we actually practice the relationship with God first, and then our spouse, and then everything else. So following God, there is my husband. Following God for my husband, then there is me, and then there's everything else. And what I'm starting to notice is that a lot of people are putting other things in between their spouse and their spiritual relationship. And this is just my 2 cents. I'm thinking that is causing a huge problem in marriages, because communication is so important in marriage.
Yeah.
But I thoroughly believe, and we practice this in our marriage, is that our relationship with God is paramount. It has to start there, because if we have our relationship with God intact, then our relationship with our spouse and everybody else thereafter is on point. It just is. It's not saying that you have to get along all the time and that, he's perfect, she's perfect. Not at all. But it does help to understand that how I relate to my relationship with God is how I'm going to relate to my husband, and vice versa. So that's how we, have dealt with in our marriage. But there are some people that I have come across that I have known for a while or for a long time, that they were going to church and then they stopped going to church. They were praying together and then they stopped praying together. And then I have recently figured out in some cases that people have put other things or other people before their spouse. Now, where I'm perplexed is that the majority of the people that we've come in contact with that we know, whether it's my husband who knows them or I know them, whose spouse has decided that they no longer wish to be married, predominantly they have been the wives. And that kind of that kind of interests me because, yeah, if any married person says that they have never thought about, first of all, killing their spouse or divorcing their spouse, they are lying. They're just lying. I've been married, like I said, 4 years, and a man may hear this and he'll probably say, "Oh my God!" But no, we've all talked about it. He and I have argued about it. I'm getting a divorce. I don't even marry you anymore. That kind of thing, because we're two different human beings and we're growing together, but we always bring it back to God. Where I'm really confused, and maybe you can tap into, is what's going on. When I say it's all women, and it's not all the ladies' fault, but what's going on with all these women leaving their husbands, and where is the shortcoming that perhaps they are experiencing, perhaps? I don't know. I think it's really weird.
Well, one thing I am very cautious of, and I learned this many years ago in talking to people in general, married people specifically, and most specifically married women. I have, over the years, had people constantly asking me about relationship issues and various things with relationships. I've never been in a relationship other than with God and myself, honestly. You cannot misconstrue the involvement I have had with men, and I staunchly self-identify as heterosexual. The relationships I've had with men, I stopped calling them lying bastards a long time ago, but that's what they were. Because if you forget you were at your own damn wedding, you are a lying bastard. So, with that said, I am very cautious when I talk to anyone about relationships, specifically to marriage or intimate relationships, because number one, I've never been in one. I don't have a really civilized point of reference on that. And number two, since I have been by myself most of my life, I'm happy and I enjoy it. One thing I recognized years ago, specifically when I was in the military, having a conversation, just a general conversation, a group of women, we're talking about things, we're talking about life. And of course, I was single and just living life and enjoying my life, seeing the sights of these places I was traveling to and going to most of those things by myself. I would tour countrysides by myself. I'd go to restaurants and things by myself. That, for some reason, appealed to certain people, and the fact that I could actually function as a single person in the world, still be happy and do things. And if you have been involved with someone most of your life and you have never disconnected from another person to figure out how fearless you really are, the first time you do that and you get that taste of freedom, you want to run. And like you said, the relationships that I'm hearing about that are dissolving, the women are running for the hills. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I've known at least the guy in one of those relationships for decades. They are doing very, very well. So it is not an issue of money. The kids are healthy and grown and leaving. But in one specific case, the woman felt as if she had not found herself or lived her life. They got married in their 20s. So now we're all in our 50s, almost 30 years, and they're like, it's time for me to find myself. And I don't understand how you, in a supportive relationship with someone who loves you and you are financially set, the kids are happy, healthy, thriving, I don't know what the disconnect would be there. I really don't.
Well, I think you just hit on something, though, seriously, that, okay, if you got married and you didn't take the time out to figure out who you were, then you go through the routine of being married, having children, having a job, a career, whatever, and then the children all grow up, and then your retirement comes about, and now you're looking at each other like the two strangers. Mm-hmm. That makes a little bit more sense to my brain, but I kind of wanted to go back and just touch on the fact that I think it's absolutely important that when you're in a relationship, whether you're dating or whether you're married, but especially when you're married, that you maintain your own identity. I think we as women, in general, we tend to
Nurture,
be
take care of
right, try to
everyone.
be everything. Yeah, I'm going to be everything in this relationship. Everything that he needs is going to be about him. And I think that when women do things like that, they lose, obviously, themselves. I've always said, and I will continue to say, I came into this world as an individual. I'm going to leave this world as an individual. So why, even if I get into a marriage situation, or like our friendship, my friendship with you doesn't negate who I am as an individual.
Right.
My marriage to my husband doesn't negate who I am as an individual. And if my husband was that type of person that wanted me to negate my individuality, then that should not be my husband.
Yeah.
Because we are. We're separate entities. God made me as he made my husband, and he provided both of us with passions and dreams and, purpose. That doesn't mean that I have to, because here comes the word, people always talk about being submissive. That doesn't mean that I just mold into who my husband thinks and wants me to be. And if you're doing that kind of thing, and I will go ahead on record and say it, you are really doing an injustice to yourself. Because what about your dreams? What about your goals? What about your purpose that God gave to you?
So
part of your purpose, I'm sorry, really quick, but part of your purpose, it could be that you are to be a wife. But that doesn't negate the fact that, hey, maybe you're a songwriter. Maybe you know how to, fix cars or whatever. That doesn't mean that you have to, just forfeit who you are just to be in a relationship.
And see that.
I'm sorry, you wanted.
Yeah, that's part of what I try to understand about relationships, because if you go into it honestly, and it's not that goo goo gaga Twitter-pated type of love or relationship that we pull from the Disney movies or Hollywood. If you are two individuals understanding that you are two separate entities going into this conjoined and keeping God at the head of your household, or do you go into it with trickery and deceit? Because I have always wanted to be married. And if we go back to, oh my goodness, now I'm here trying to find scripture. I don't know the exact scripture, but he who finds a wife at the age of 12, I heard that in church one day, he who finds a wife, and my 12-year-old little brain was going, so I got to be a wife before I get married. What does that mean? So I have to be a whole complete person before that situation. I have to know how to hold down my household, take care of myself, which includes grooming and health and mammograms, and I need to know how to balance a checkbook and purchase a car and change the brakes and change the oil, because people die, and even though I might get married, something could still come in between us. So if I'm not a whole person going into this relationship, then we're already deficient. I also need to trust.
Right there, I'm sorry, I think right there, whole. You came into that relationship whole, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you weren't a half person, and if you were a half person, then maybe you shouldn't have gotten into the relationship. But you came in as a whole human being. And as a married person, I can go on record again and say the honeymoon phase does go away. It goes away. It doesn't stay for always. People think, get married and we're just going to live happily ever after. We're going to walk on the beach hand in hand. No, that's not always the case. And there are moments where there's tension and there's craziness, but you hit the nail right on the head. If you're not whole coming into that relationship, and in my definition of whole is you do know how to take care of yourself. We keep God first, obviously. That's never going to go off of my radar. But if you don't know how to take care of yourself, yourself.
Can't help nobody else. Put your gas mask on first.
Yeah, right. I mean, seriously. So you think that you're just kind of, and I'm not knocking this because there was a generation where, you know, you needed to know how to cook and clean and take care of your husband and have his meal ready when he comes in the house.
Everybody need to know how to do that.
Okay, but right.
You'll be a hungry ass in my house trying to wait for me to cook something. And I love to cook.
I skipped the cooking part, absolutely. So yeah, that's in here there. But more power to that. What I'm simply just saying is that there's more to us than just cooking and cleaning and, you know, being there for sexual needs and all that good stuff. If we do not maintain our identity, what did you say?
I'm just shocked that people still have sex, but I'm glad somebody is. Okay.
It happens. It does. I heard about it. No. No, but seriously, right? I mean, because we're supposed to be whole human beings, even separated. You know, my husband's not where I'm at right now. It doesn't mean that I'm now a half human being because he's gone off to go take care of what he's taking care of and vice versa. We're whole. We're supposed to support each other. We're supposed to encourage each other. But I'm thinking that, and I'm just going to use one case in particular that I am aware of and that I'm actually familiar with. And she and I have been friends for a long period of time. And she told me that she had just had enough.
Dang. Of what?
Right. And I'm giggling only because I can relate to that. I really can. Because there have been moments in this past 4 years of marriage. Mind you, we've been together longer than our marriage, but our 4 years of marriage, there have been moments where I'm like, I've had enough. I've had enough of this man, and if he doesn't knock it off or whatever, I'm out of here. Of course, it's crossed my mind, but when I spoke to her about, you know, okay, so you've had enough, are you two trying to work it out by putting God first? Well, he doesn't want to participate with the God. You know,
which one? Oh my goodness.
I'm like, well, maybe you should try the God of food. Maybe that will help. Because they say, you know, way to the man's heart is through the stomach. I don't know. But I'm joking, of course. But
or the fourth and fifth clavicle. Okay, sorry. I'm a little off.
My point was in this conversation with her was that he doesn't want to participate with this God. Okay. It's the man, and I'm not going to speak to men because I'm not a man, but I do know that we as women, if the man has the foundation and he's on point and he's all set, we're going to follow him. We just are. We're naturally born to follow that. That doesn't mean that, you know, we you know, quit our own purposes and our own dreams and that kind of stuff or whatever. But what I'm saying is we're automatically going to be submissive.
I need to interject.
If the man, right? But no, I mean, seriously, right? Even if the man is on point and he's handling his business and he's being a responsible man with God first, the foundation built up, and his relationship with the woman on point, we're going to follow. We just are. That's how he built us to do. And you know, people can disagree with that, but when the Bible tells us to be submissive to our husbands and that sort of thing, I think that we fight with that because our little crazy minds interpret that as, oh, I got to do everything he says, and when he tells me to jump, I got to jump, and when he, you know, wants this, I got to do. That's not what that means.
Might I interject?
That's not at all.
May I just dive head first into this?
Yes, because I can keep going for days. Yeah. But go ahead, yes.
But in regards to submissiveness, fantastic. That's great. There's an entire community that calls that bondage and sadomasochism. Totally different thing from marriage. But
what?
when you start going into biblical understanding or biblical scripture on that whole thing, if you go down, because most people don't read below that, and it's women submit to your husbands. Husbands submit to your wives. So you have two people in a relationship submitting to each other. One thing, as a single woman, never having been married, never having been in a relationship, the trickery and deceit that I speak of in relationships or involvements that I've been in are based on traditional community understanding of the Bible and what is expected in a marriage. And I recall years ago, probably around the time I got out of the military, 28 years old, still not married, being called a spinster, being called an old maid. You ain't never gonna get a man. Where your man? You ain't got no babies, and all of that. And I recall talking to an older member of my family who'd been married for many years. And I wanted to understand, firmly understand, if I was going against some biblical grain in regards to marriage and having children. And when people saw that I was not successfully getting dates, the conversation immediately went to, well, you need to hurry up and have your babies. You should have your babies when you were young. And I'm like, okay, I personally don't want to be a single parent, and that whole co-parenting thing doesn't appeal to me either. Why am I supposed to have babies? Why am I supposed to go furiously after that? And that person said to me, which is what changed the whole dynamic of my thought process for marriage and children, this individual who I love dearly said, it's not that every woman should have children. You need to have some so you'll know how hard it is. And as many times as I'd been told to sit down, shut the hell up, I was a badass kid, you kids working on my nerves, I knew it was hard. So I did not need to go into either of those situations just to test the theory that had already been tested and I'd seen lived out. The idea of marriage itself, combining my life, because at this stage, I'm dang, I forgot how old I was, but I am of an age where I have already accumulated stuff. It will be the combining of households at this point with like mind and like ideas. The trickery and deceit that played into situations when I was younger is we had so many of those generational, supposedly moral platforms that suggested that a woman was worthless after a certain age if she wasn't married. So men I met honestly thought I was hard up and desperate with low self-esteem and that I was going to tolerate anything because I needed to have a man. No, I need oxygen. I need blood flowing through my veins. Those are the things you need to live.
And hot wings. Hot wings. I need hot wings.
I'm kind of, off the meat right now, but yeah, we'll see.
Sorry, but I need hot wings with extra salt. Okay. Carry on.
But
wait, hold on. Lemon pepper wings.
Oh, God.
All
Okay,
right.
I
Go
prefer
ahead.
garlic.
It's almost lunchtime here. Go ahead.
But
Sorry.
anyway, the idea that I had already been pegged as being hard up and desperate because I went past a certain age, that age of acceptance for a woman being married and having children, and now I'm over 50. So the clowns really exit the circus breakdancing, thinking, oh wow, she's going to tolerate anything I give her because she has to be upset.
Right.
So
that's insane.
to continually force feed the idea that we have got to get married at a certain age and you cannot be happy being single, first of all, is an injustice to any child you love to force that information on them. It is a bold-faced lie. But the idea of leaving your spouse after decades under the assumption that you have to find yourself, that's problematic to me. But again, I'm not married. I don't know what that world is like.
No, I think it's 100% problematic. Because I'm sorry, I'm going to go right back to the story that I started about the lady that I know who says that she's tired. She's just tired of him. Well, what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
I don't get that. Because then you marry this person to spend the rest of your life with, and if you were dating him before you got married, unless you just married him, you went to Vegas and got married, again, you knew this person.
Yeah.
Now, what's problematic in her situation, and from a married person, I will speak on this, is that all of a sudden your husband has lost a relationship with God. So, of course, automatically you're going to lose a married relationship because you've lost the ultimate relationship.
Okay.
But where do you stop and say, you know what, pump the brakes? If we joined in matrimony under God with witnesses, then unless there's something absolutely catastrophic going on within that marriage, I don't understand how you just say, I've had enough. I don't. I get it.
Well,
I just don't see how you follow through with it.
Here's something I've heard recently, and I heard it decades ago. You don't marry for potential. And I find a good majority of women I know, they were hellfire set on marrying that guy because he had potential. He was smart, well-spoken, poised, from a good family. It appeared that there was going to be an inheritance. He had strong features, therefore strong genes, and could qualify as a good. This is going to be a horrible, a good seed.
Oh.
They were going to have cute babies and all of that. And years into the marriage, I remember a woman telling me, "Do not marry for potential, because that could fall all apart if the person you're marrying does not see their potential." And if you marry someone for potential, thinking that they are going to grow into this magnificent person, involved in their community, bringing home a substantial paycheck, perfect example to the children and all of this, and he turns out to be someone who sits on the couch playing computer games forever.
Or he's living on down low. Go ahead.
Okay. Living on the DL. Yeah. Oh, heck yeah. And I'll, yeah. The last one I went out with, oh, okay. So.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. I did not mean to divert the conversation to that. I just didn't.
And it all goes back again to who are you, and did you do that? It's normally done in business. Did you do a 5, 10, 15, 20 year projection? And I foolishly did that at the age of 12. I foolishly did that. I knew.
So you did a projection on your husband?
I did, because at the age of 12, what is that, like the sixth grade, sixth grade, and we were doing journals, and we were identifying, because I went to a fantastic school where whatever teacher that was, I think her name was Miss Comer, would have us write down, that whole what do you want to be when you grow up thing, and what do you see your thing. It was almost like building a vision board at that point. And I knew at 12 I wanted to be married when I was 25, because I'd be done with college, and so would he. I didn't want to have my first babies, twin girls, until I was 28. I was very specific.
Twin girls.
Twin girls. Okay. And then 2 years.
Did you name them?
I did. Okay. I did, and I still have the journal with all that in it.
Oh.
Yes.
All right.
And then their first brother was going to be born 3 years after them. And then another. I broke it down. I had pictures of the house we were going to live in. I had, I knew we were going to have a family business. I knew I was going to do the marketing and communication. At 12, I knew this. This is what I wanted at 12. Well,
all I wanted was the Barbie penthouse at 12. I wanted the Barbie penthouse and the Corvette.
Okay.
But go ahead.
But I was projecting like that even before Oprah came on the scene and started telling people to start a journal. I was doing that. I think it was too much for the universe. God was sitting up there going, find her something to do, just anything, because all of that right there, that's a bit much. It's just a bit much. She is too specific. But the reality was, I did fall in love. And take Michael Jackson off of the table, because that was indeed my very first love. And it went on entirely too long. But
and he's gone on.
He's gone on, bless his soul. But the guy I did fall madly in love with, and I thought we were connected, and I thought he was going to be the one, and I saw his potential. every day of my life, I thank God for knowing me better than I know myself, because that would have been a disaster. It would have been a
That is
disaster.
so interesting.
Yeah.
And see, and I'm the polar opposite. I never wanted to be married. Never. And my husband already knows this, so when he hears this, he won't freak out. But I never wanted to be married. And as you know, Larry is my second husband. My first husband was Donovan's father, and he passed away in 2005 from a brain aneurysm. But even when I got married to him, and I remember, did you know my friend Jennifer? I think you may or may not know her. I can't remember. I don't remember who knows who. So, but I remember Jennifer read the program at my wedding to Donovan's father. His name's Malachi. And Malachi and I's wedding. And I had wrote on the back of the program something to the effect, basically saying, if this should work out.
Wow.
And she made she made this comment to me, and I was like, oh, because you just never know, Jennifer. You just never know. And Jennifer's happily married. She and David have been married for a long period of time now.
Over 20 years. I was at both of your weddings. Yeah, I was at both of your weddings.
No, she's been married for. Yeah, she went to. Her and David are still together. But nonetheless, I remember her making a comment like, "Why would you write that?" I was like, "Because you just never know." My mind has always been, I need to be self-sufficient, and I have been self-sufficient. I am self-sufficient.
Right.
Because, as Malachi has shown, people die.
Yeah.
Husbands die. Wives die.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to maintain yourself and take care of yourself,
You
because
will
I know
die
people
in
who
there
didn't
as
even
well.
know how. Right, but I mean, right there, I knew people that didn't even have a driver's license because their husband would drive them everywhere. And I'm like, what kind of foolishness is that? And I call it foolishness because husbands die, wives die, husbands leave, wives leave.
Well, let's think about that from past generations, because there was a time when women were not allowed to drive.
This is our generation I'm talking about.
Right, and
Our
our generation is on the tail end of what that was and the perception of it. And most of my great aunts didn't drive at all, and the majority of them that didn't drive, some of them learned eventually, and some of them, their husbands were like, no, you're gonna learn how to drive because I'm not gonna be your chauffeur.
For real.
But
I mean, okay, can we just pump the brakes for just a second? And I'm just going to ask this question, and I may be pissing off a lot of people in this whole dialogue, but where is yourself in any of that?
Well,
that you absolutely, you don't drive, you don't want to drive, you don't know how to balance that book, you don't want to know how to balance.
You've got to take all of the case scenarios and put them on the table. What generation are you from? What generation raised you? What environment are you from? And if you come out of that environment and have to be placed in another one, can you pick up those skills? Or are you, like I've seen a lot of women do, just gonna start looking for another man to take care of you? But this isn't even specific to women anymore. We have a younger generation now where men honestly have, the script has been flipped, and a lot of these young guys are like, I can find me an older woman and, just kick back because she just wants some company. FYI to the entire world, I am not a cougar. Everybody up under the roof with me will have a job. If you don't know how to work or contribute, I'm not your girl at all.
Well, I don't get how you, as an individual, and I'm going to let this go, I promise I am, but probably because my mom came from a generation where, no, it wasn't, you get married, you have children, you let your husband take care of you. That's her generation, but my mom was always independent, and she always showed or gave that appearance. She always gave that appearance, and she always told me that I needed to know how to take care of myself. And my whole growing up process at 12, I wanted to be single for the rest of my life and just travel the world. Well, I got part of that done.
I wanted to travel the world with my husband. Yeah.
No, that's all I wanted to do. I never wanted children. I never wanted husband. I never wanted any of that. But being married and being so dependent upon your spouse, whether it's the man or the woman, because I do know the flip side of that too. I know a woman whose husband is just so dependent upon her, it's actually frightening But if something were to happen to that person, in my mind, and it's mine, and I know, Gail, we're talking generational situations and, environmental situations, but I'm going to implore people to say, you know what, if something were to happen, how do I take care of myself? Do I even know how to take care of myself?
Here,
Even in this, I'm sorry, really quick, even in this situation where I am married, my husband takes care of all the bills. That's his thing. He's in that whole finance stuff, so that's his stuff. But if, God forbid, something were to happen to him and I'm left on my own, you better believe I better know how to, get into the electric bill and make sure that the bills are paid and the things. Because in my growing up and understanding of life, this was a necessity. It's a necessity because we are not guaranteed tomorrow. Heck, we're not even guaranteed the rest of this day.
the next 5 minutes.
If you go away, right?
So you need to know how to access these recordings in the event. God forbid. And I'm sorry, I'm going to digress for just a second because I want to go back to talk about just the whole marriage thing. And I want women to understand, I'm not, or men, because this happens on the flip side as well, that I'm not condoning staying in a marriage where there's an abusive situation going on or, infidelity and that kind of stuff and, whatever. Those types of things are, to me, game changers right there in relationships because that's not love. Those activities are not love. But to say that after I think they were married 22 years, she's tired of him and couldn't give a quite good explanation as to what does that mean, except for the fact that he has basically fallen away from God. I mean, I guess that is a good explanation. It just baffled my head. Like, okay, can we at least find out what's caused him to turn his back on God? Because maybe something has gone on that you're not even aware of. And therefore, maybe you just need to talk it out or work it out type situation. But a lot of women are just throwing up their hands. And again, I'm not in their marriage, and I don't know the detail of it. Well,
but it's baffling.
You said something a moment ago about how do you handle things once disaster happens. I've seen that played out. I've seen people who were so dependent on their parents they would not get wouldn't go away from and that was some enabling by the parents, and they would not move from their parents. Well, one case scenario was through Hurricane Katrina, and once that person's parent died and they couldn't find him, suddenly that joker knew how to do everything. It wasn't a matter, it was not allowed. If you have someone there who is enabling you and doing everything for you, some people just get into that mindset of, well, I really don't have to know how to do that because I already know this person is going to do it. That person dies. It's like, oh, well, hell, I'll watch them do it long enough. I can get this done. So it's in them. They are empowered. They're just either lazy or comfortable. I've never had the luxury of that type of comfort in my life. But I've also seen a scenario where women have been married so long and the man took care of everything. And then when he died, to her dismay, she could not find the checkbooks. She couldn't find anything. But when the other family showed up with those additional kids and that other woman had all that information, suddenly she just felt disrespected and all sorts of things.
Hold on. Wait, I'm sorry. Hold on. So the husband died, and then the husband had extra stuff going on the side, and that extra stuff showed up.
Whole nother family.
Oh.
She had no idea of it. And that happens quite often, which is why I posted once on social media, dear mothers, please tell your children the truth before 23andMe start a fight in your house you can't explain or win. You can't keep all of those lies going. That will definitely mess you up completely. The idea that you feel obligated to hide things, to hide the truth of who you want to be, is unfortunate. I have been, well, you know my background. I was in the military and I was a cop in the military. I have gone through so much emergency management training. I am a soldier. I am a warrior. I am a Viking. And my 23andMe outlines all of that. I got all of that coursing through my veins to include a whole lot of hood. When stuff
Hey,
goes
wait, I'm a Viking.
You're a Viking too?
I went to Vanden High School.
Oh, hell.
I'm Vanden Viking. Go ahead. I'm a Viking. True and true.
With all...
Class of 86. Hoorah.
Oh, God. I'm actually thinking about buying a wood axe to see if I could use it. But in regards to the emergency management training, I know for certain I'm not going into any situation or relationship being the damsel in distress. When stuff starts popping off, I'm looking around for the exits. And if I am running at any point in time, you need to get in front of me and say, hey, I'll meet you.
But say, where do we get that notion? And you just said, I said something else that just, and it plays true in television and movies. Why do we have to always be the damsel in distress? That we need a hero to come along and save us.
Yeah. It's contrived and it's learned behavior.
It's telling lies. Go ahead. I'm sorry, what?
Well, it's contrived. It's contrived, and it's the fantasies that we read in books, that we see in movies. It's learned behavior that in order to have a man, this mythical creature that will come into your life, pay all of the bills, buy you a big house, get you a beautiful car, and these reality shows are really promoting that is a reality. It is not a reality that there is someone who is going to look at you, fall in love, and do all of that. The last man I was involved with, pretty much told me I was ugly, then turned around and told me I was beautiful. And I don't know where he is or what he is doing with his life, but had I been in a mindset to go, okay, maybe he's just going through some things, I need to understand it, he's a man and he's handsome and I need to be with him, not only would I have lost myself, we would be doing this broadcast from a maximum security women's prison, because
I don't think that they would allow that.
Yeah, I'd have gone there, and I was going there with him because he systematically just kept picking at me, which it only lasted a few hours because I'm not really good at letting people screw with me. But what's that saying? But what's that saying? Hurt people. Right. But we cannot. Once again, it's an individual choice of how you pull your relationship together. Once you get married, you stand, and I'm talking about the traditional marriages that we have known of. And even the non-traditional, if you are in a church, you're standing, that is necessarily not for your family. We're no longer bringing tribes together to build nations. Most nations are built, we're trying to heal communities. But when you stand in front of your family, mom and them are just spectators. You're standing there building a covenant with God, which is what I understand about marriage. So for you to lie about your marital status, for you to lie about who you really are going into that marriage, for you to go into that marriage because you need a savior, that right there is problematic because you've already X'd God out of your relationship. Right. For me,
and marriage requires a lot of work. Okay,
that's what I hear.
And like I said, I know people who've been married for decades upon decades, and they still say the same thing. Mm-hmm. You are actually familiar with one couple, and I'm not going to say her name because she may come over to my house and jack me up, but she's the one who surprised me with you and Lamitra coming to, I think we went, right. Okay, so she and her husband have been married for ever. I mean, seriously, I think they've been married for like 60 years, if not longer. I don't even know. That's probably exaggeration, but they've been married forever. And she made this statement to me one day that just tickled me. And I fell out because I'm like, they've been married since the beginning of time. And she said, oh no, he gets on my nerves probably every day. And most of the time, I just need to get away from him for a few hours, just be on my own and do my own thing. And I remember thinking to myself, because at that time I think my husband and I were only married for like 2 or 3 years, maybe, I don't know. And I thought to myself, oh my God, does it just go like this for the rest of our lives? You know, like, oh my God, we're going to be like this for the rest of our lives. And the truth of the matter is, I'm not a married marriage expert and I'm not a marriage counselor, but I can only see from where I come from in my marriage that it does require work, and you are lying if you're saying that every day is happy, every day is great, everything is perfect, he's wonderful, she's wonderful, we don't argue. If you don't argue, I think that there's a concern there, because we're two different people. As you know, my husband, he comes from a whole other continent, let alone the fact that we're two different people. We have two different cultures, we have two different ideas on things, and we're not always arguing and fighting, but when we do, we had to learn to argue and fight fair.
Yeah.
In the beginning, we would say hurtful things to each other because that's where we were coming from. We would put God somewhere up in there, but we had moved him out of the way from first position, and we would say things to each other that were very hurtful. Then we would come back, go to church and go to our groups and stuff like this and so on and so forth, and we realized, you know what, hold on. If we're going to have this marriage be sustainable, we're going to have to learn to argue and fight fair. Mm-hmm. So the name calling and that kind of stuff, because I think you know me well enough, oh yeah, we can get down if we need to get down, but that's no way of having a marriage. That's no way of having a healthy marriage. But I want to get back to the point of talking about when you decide that you no longer want to be in this marriage, and there's no physical abuse or any type of abuse going on, there's no infidelity going on, what has caused you to break down? Because, you broke down. There's something that has caused you to just
and that doesn't happen
down
overnight. If you've been married over 20-something years, that's a build-up.
Right. And that's what I'm getting at. Okay.
But in relationships in general should be respectful. I'm skittish. Call me out my name. I'm a fond memory. Go to GailWashington.com. You can see me every day, because after that moment, you will not see me in person again. I am that skittish. The idea of being with someone who would disrespect me on any level, I'm not good at that at all. And that's based on the relationships I saw. My parents, I am very happy that they didn't murder each other in front of us, because it was that volatile. There were knives and guns pulled and dishes broken and all sorts of stuff. With my godparents, when I moved in with them, when my mom and I moved, and she was sick, so I was living with them, if they argued, we never knew, because they kept that between them as husband and wife, and they went and they handled it, and it was not for children to witness, because we didn't ask to be here, and they did not want to put that upon us. My parents, on the other hand.
But here's a question.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin, can I interrupt real quick? Here's a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So when your parents were married, what's the duration in marriage between your parents versus your godparents?
My parents were married up until, this is really not funny. My parents were married until my mom died. So my mom died when I was 18, meaning they'd been married probably about 16 years, if the timeline is correct. And they were separated 3. And they left.
And then your godparents?
And they left each other like every 3 months. It was like intervals. They'd leave and come back. It was just ridiculous dysfunction. My godparents were married 60 years up until the day my goddad passed away a few years ago.
And then, and I'm getting to a point in just a second, but in that time that your godparents were married, did you ever see them go off separate ways type situation, or no?
Unless they were going on vacation, separate vacations, no.
Separate. Okay.
Like
so
leaving
they
each
took
other?
Separate vacation.
No. They were very much a wonderful example of a relationship, because they were military people. He was in the Navy, and they knew they were different people, but they'd known each other since they were 10. That's that community where you grew up together. Everyone knew everyone's parents and grandparents, and the community would come together and do things for each other. So him being in the military, she held the house down, made sure the kids were okay. When he came home, the kids went to the grandparents' house so they could have their time together. And then when they took vacations as a family when the kids were younger. When they got older,
See,
yeah.
in my mind, and again, obviously you know these individuals better than I do, but in my mind, the difference between the relationships that we're talking about is their foundation. It sounds to me, right, and so that's why I'm getting at that, because I know your godparents, right, right. So I do know them, and they always seemed, in my opinion, to be a really good, strong relationship.
Yeah.
Do I know now that I'm an adult and I'm married, do I know that they did argue? Absolutely, I know that they did argue.
Yeah.
But they set their foundation on high.
Yes.
That it wasn't going to be moved. It was not going to be shaken. They may have their moments, but we're going to deal with our moments one-on-one. Whereas, because, I don't want to throw my mom and dad out there because you already know about this situation as well, that I thought their foundation was on high, thought it was. And, I grew up listening to and watching my parents. They would argue with each other. I never saw any physical abuse and none of that kind of stuff, but they would argue with each other, and they would argue sometimes in front of us. But they always seemed to have it on high, but then later in life, the cracks started to show. Right? Whereas I'm saying with your godparents that we never saw, and I said we because I never saw a crack in the short time that I spent around them. I never saw a crack. And to me, it appears to me that their foundation, their relationship foundation was already solid.
They had that, the family, their families knew each other. They knew how to interact. They knew how to talk to each other. They grew up together in the same environment. So, of course, their platform, they had a lot of the same interests, the same background. They understood themselves before going into that, even though they married young. They got married when they were like 17.
Right.
Yeah, they got married very young.
And that's it. That's it. Because your godmother in particular, she stands out the most in my memory. She always came across to me as very independent. She had her mind. She had her,
that girl is wild. She is wild because she's in her 80s now, and she just got back from a trip. So I know the strength of my bloodline, and that is the men and women included. But if they argued, we weren't in on that. That was not our business. Yeah, it wasn't our business.
Because people call it old-fashioned or whatever, but I 100% agree with it. Because just like my husband and I, you will not see us arguing. You just won't. If we have a disagreement and someone else is around, we know that we have a disagreement, and we'll talk about it at another point. Because our marriage is sacred to each other. We're sacred to each other. And I don't want no one coming along talking about, you should have told him this or he shouldn't have did this.
Not
First
your
of all,
business.
stay out of my marriage. I'll stay out of yours.
Yeah.
Right? But getting back to this whole marriage conversation and relationship conversation, I just think it's so important that your foundation doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to be solid, a solid foundation going into that relationship. And again, using your godparents as a great example, and even the lady you and I both know that brought you and Omitra out here for us to go see, even their relationship, they need time away from each other. Because they're human and they're two different people, they do need their alone time, just like I know my husband and I need our moments alone. But if your foundation, and looking at their relationship in particular, their foundation, from the outside, people, they're crazy and I wouldn't tolerate that from her and whatever.
That's
their foundation
not mine to even have an opinion on. Yeah.
Okay, right. Because you don't know what's going on behind closed doors.
And
you really don't.
And
the happiest looking couples could be the most miserable.
Most toxic.
Sorry.
But see, the strongest relationships that I've witnessed in my family, all of my siblings have been married or in long-term relationships. I don't do temporary relationships. You're in or you're out. I'm not going to give you 30 years to figure out how you feel about me. That is not something you need to take 100 years to do. But if you're a lioness and you're already married and you're trying to fool someone with that, and once the lie comes about, it's time for us to move on. The strongest relationships in my family have, sorry, I didn't mean to deflect like that, but yes, I
No.
did. Yes, I did. But the strongest relationships in my family, my older sister just celebrated her 45th anniversary. They did a vow renewal. My other sister's been married over 30 something years. Her and her husband, they still date. They drive me bananas because these two nuts will call me at 2 o'clock in the morning because they're walking through Walmart. And I'm like, first of all, I don't need to know your business like that. I don't know what those trips are about. And I'm not certain why you need to share them with me. You got him. Go to the other side. And then she'll
Right.
be yelling at him. It's cute and it's crazy all at the same time. But in looking at my parents, I often wonder if there is some type of, I don't want to say cosmic, but some type of thing that attaches itself to you that manifests your relationships. Because honestly, I don't even know how to enter into one, because once I am disrespected, I'm out. And I hear often from married women, well, you got to give it time. No, I'm sorry, you don't. Especially if we're not
see,
married.
and here's what well, especially if you're not married. But when you are married, and I mean, when you're not married, then okay, then no, peace out. But when you are married, there are good moments and there are not so good moments. If you don't know how to roll with the not so good moments, and all you want is good moments, then no, marriage is not for you. Because marriage does not just come, my husband's going to come home, he's going to come home with a bouquet of flowers, and he's going to make me dinner, and all that. No, there are going to be moments where because you're two different people.
Yeah.
And so there are going to be moments where it's like, my husband, who will hear this, he gets on my nerves sometimes, and I know I get on his nerves sometimes. He does things that I'm just like, no, I'm not down with that. I mean, nothing illegal or, satanic or nothing like this, but, he does things that is like...
I don't know why bunny rabbits popped into my head, but...
Yeah, I think, nothing is going to, it's not a heaven or hell issue.
Yeah.
It's just because he's his own person.
Yeah.
I have to take a back seat sometimes and say, you know what, hold on, this is who he is.
Okay,
I
here's a
love
question.
him as a whole. Not just because, I like when he does this, but I don't like when he does that, so therefore I'm going to not love him in that moment where he does something that I don't like.
Okay, so
what are you going to say?
I got a question, and and maybe this is a bad thing to do when in the dating stage, but again, I've never been in a relationship. I never seem to. Dang, I barely get past the appetizers, but
Well,
I start doing an assessment, and I remember years ago, if this is the worst thing about him, can I handle this on the long term? I can deal with bad table manners. I mean, unless you got your feet on the table and you're trying to eat, that's a problematic, because that's something
and you took your
that
sock off and started scratching in between your toes.
chewing on your toenails, yeah, that's a problem.
Right.
But not
I'm sorry.
not
Yeah.
knowing how to use a knife or a fork, that's learned behavior. That can be picked up and learned along the way. If that's the worst thing about him, can I handle that? That I can get past. I don't have that Disney idyllic image of marriage, because like you said, it's two separate people coming together, and you've got to start unpacking your crap at some point to see who's got what. How do we make this part work? Do we throw this away? Can we put this in a garage? One thing, and again, I have to stress the respect part. You do not stick around after you've been disrespected that first time, because from my experience, that leads up to that person seeing how much you can take. And I don't know why men don't hear me when I say this, and my sister told me to stop saying it. I am a combat trained veteran. You do not want to keep...
You had to hit him in the throat.
Okay.
Right. I understand why you say it.
Yeah.
Because you're just letting that warning be known
Yeah.
that I am trained
You-
to actually kill you with a toothpick.
You don't want to keep stockpiling to see
But
my triggers.
Can I just make a quick statement though?
Mhm.
Seriously, about the whole disrespect thing? Okay. Um, and I don't know how to say this without upsetting other people on this
Oh,
on
go
this level.
for it.
Okay, so my husband and I dated for a long period of time before we got, well, not very long. I mean, we actually met years ago, and the story's not necessary. What is necessary is that when we were dating, we broke up like probably about 5 or 6 times.
Mm-hmm.
5 or 6 times we broke up in the course of our dating, and it all stems from us being our independent selves. And you say something I don't like, I'm going over here. I say something you don't like, you're going over there. And that went on, but like I said, we broke up at least 5 times before we actually got married. One thing and one thing only I can honestly tell you, Gail, in my relationship, and I'm not saying this for everybody, but in my relationship, I knew that my husband was going to be my husband. And I knew it because of my relationship with God. And I'm going to have to use that as the foundation because that's what it was. I knew that every time we break up, even though I was like stubborn because I would leave and I would go out, he'd go his way, I go my way, we always came back together. And some people would usually say, oh, well, you know what, that's like a, psychotic behavior or, abusive relationship type situation and your minds are just all jacked up. I think that you actually need to, not necessarily you, but anyone listening, that you really need to do a self-evaluation as to, is this the guy that, or the woman that God is leading me to? And you have to be honest.
And
you have to, because
I've done that.
I'm sorry.
I've done that. And the fact
that seriously, the most painful thing is, because I'm telling you right now, if you talk to any married couple, there are moments in everybody's marriage where you're just like, what is this all about? And why am I still here? What is this about? I have actually listened to my pastor, Reginald Steele, and his wife Kelly, and how when they were dating, they met young. They were in high school. My husband and I did not meet young, but they met in high school. And they're very transparent about their relationship and how many times they broke up and, infidelity and things like this. I'm not letting out their secrets. They're very transparent about it while they were dating each other. I'm simply saying that there are things that are game changers. Like I told my husband, infidelity is something that will not be tolerated.
Mm-mm.
That is a game changer for me.
Yeah.
You calling me names while we're dating, well, if I'm doing the exact same thing, I'm serious, and I'm being transparent right now. Okay, listen, Alaire and I called the police on each other. Okay, I know people are like, why is she telling people this? Because it's honest. It's honest. It's 100% real. When you're forming a relationship that God has joined together, and I'm going to use that as the only foundation because that's the only one I know. When you're joining a relationship that God has put together, and people think, oh, it should just click together. Well, no, because you're two different people. He has his bad habits. I have my bad habits. Mm-hmm. He gets on my nerves. I get on his nerves. But what is the 100% fix-all to everything, and why Alaire and I are still married after 4 years. It's only been 4 years. It seems like 40, but it's been a good 40 years. The only thing that I can tell you that why we are still together and why we are still married, besides the obvious of love, is our relationship with God. Because Alaire does do things that gets on my nerves, and I do things that get on his nerves. But we have to learn that, first of all, I didn't come into this relationship perfect. Not at all. I'm far from perfect. So for me to have any expectations that, oh, he needs to be better at doing this marriage thing than I do is asinine, because he's just as human as I am. Are there things that I'm sure Alaire want to change about me? Absolutely. We're not going to ask him because I'm cool.
Okay.
And there are things I would love to change about Alaire. But the bottom line is, Alaire is who he is, and I am who I am. And we have to learn to love each other where we're at. Does it get better? It does. Because as you're married and you're spending time with this person, and your foundation is a solid foundation, and I guarantee you, if you were to ask your godmother this question, she'd tell you the same thing, or the other individual that you and I both know, she'd tell you the same thing. It does get better because you learn that this person is not, well, should not be out to get you. This person should be out to build you up and support you and motivate you because he or she is different than you are.
Right.
My husband thinks totally different than I do on certain things. And again, he's from a whole other continent, so
right.
There's that. But he thinks totally different. So when I see something one way, he'll come in and say, well, actually, I see it this way. And then it's like, we have these types of conversations. But if he saw one thing one way and I'm looking at him like, you're just downright stupid for thinking it that way or seeing it that way, then that's not a solid, good, healthy foundation. And I think what you said, women going into relationships wanting this fairy tale Disney World type of relationship, I think it's absolutely unreal. It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, I want to offer this because we're cutting it short today because we both have appointments to go to after that.
Yes.
But in regards to relationships and getting into them from the perspective of a single person who's always been single, I am 100% in counsel with God in regards to should I even continue to consider marriage as an option, because what I've learned about myself over the years and the involvements I've had, I am a piss poor judge of character. I was talking to coworkers about that the other day, and the reality is I go into situations with that notion of treating people the way I want to be treated, being respectful, being open, being kind, being courteous. And every involvement I've had with a man, and I don't know if it's scripted, if there's a book, or if it comes from comedians, but literally every man I've ever dated has said the same thing. I'm too nice, I'm too kind, I'm too caring, I'm too loving, I'm too loyal. And if those are bad traits, then I will never, ever be in a relationship, because I'm not giving up that portion of who I am to be a vicious monster because they have bought into whatever the heck it is they are buying into. And the fact that
there's something wrong with them.
There's something very wrong there. And the fact that since I moved to Texas, literally, and that asked me out since I've been in Texas has been married. Every one of them. I wrote Dr. Phil. I'm like, hey, listen, I know you're from Texas. Is this a thing where you get married and then you start to date? It seems a little backwards to me. I don't know. But at the age of 32, I threw the towel in. I was like, screw it. I'm not even accepting dates anymore, because if every damn man who approaches me is already married, basically what is being shown to me is that I'm not worthy of a whole relationship, and there are no good, decent men on the planet, and I refuse to believe that. I refuse to believe that. So since that is whatever type of energy I keep putting out there, I just don't trust that I am going to make the right decision. And sadly, the last person I went out with, which was just a few years ago, was introduced to me by someone who I thought knew him, and I felt a little safer in that environment. This joker turned out to be a full-blown narcissist. He was so kind in the beginning. He was he also was reading a book. He had a textbook somewhere. And then I did something and it triggered him, because I was suspicious already, having not been in a relationship. And he was very kind. And I was like, okay, Gail, chill the hell out. He's probably just a decent guy. And then he started buying me clothes. I'm like, okay, this is just weird. And he's like dropping $500.
He started buying you clothes?
Clothes. Yes. He started buying me clothes. Okay. $500 every weekend. And I'm like, okay, this is really odd because you don't know me like that. And then, just to say thank you, I got him a small gift. That triggered him. He wanted to know why I bought it. What was my ulterior motive? Why would you do this? And I ended it by saying, why you keep buying me clothes? What are you trying to change me into? Shut him up, shut him down. And then all the other crazy started coming out. And I'm like, check this out. We're done. And I had my hand on a butcher knife the last time I spoke with him.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, God. Okay.
Because his actions, the way he reacted at that moment, he convinced me that he was batshit ass crazy, and I felt in danger.
I felt my life in danger. I had a butcher knife on the ready.
And I walked to my kitchen. I put my hand on that knife, and I very calmly said, you know what? I have an autoimmune disease which is triggered by stress. You're stressing me. I need you to leave. And he just walked out with this crap-eating grin on his face, and that was it. I'm like, ooh.
So here's my question, though. Did you keep the clothes?
I did, and I re-gifted each and every one of them.
Oh, damn.
I don't have, no, if I'm shutting it down, anything you touched, first of all, I'm going to do a thorough cleaning.
I'm sorry. Can I just go back? And I know we're going to cut this short because we got other things going on. But did he pick the stuff out, or did he, like, here's the money, or come shopping? Or, I mean, did he just, like...
No, we'd go shopping together. Because he was, what I noticed about him, he was incredibly irresponsible. And we didn't date that long. I mean, this is not like months or a year. This was several weeks. This wasn't even 3 months. And he'd want me to go. We'd go to these places where he liked to shop, and they did custom alterations on the clothes. And
okay, because I was like, that was going to be my next thing.
Yeah.
Were they like hoochie clothes? Or,
no.
I mean, what kind of clothes are we talking?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm. And
all right.
even,
I'm just trying to figure out what was his motive.
But even after that, I foolishly questioned myself. After I got him out of my space, I'm like, you cannot come back to my home again. I don't want you on my block, actually. And we met through a work environment, so I'd still see him at work. And I foolishly decided, okay, Gail, and in my head I'm going, stop being mean. Because I've been told my whole life how mean I am, which has nothing to do with my personality. It's learned behavior and foolish jokes that were told in the communities where I live. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop being mean, and I'm at least going to be cordial toward this person and keep talking to them. In one of the last conversations I had with him, he told me, I look like a man, I act like a man, and he couldn't tell that I was a woman. And then he shared with me that he'd kissed one of his best friends, and the guy's wife knew and I'm like, okay, listen, go with God,
okay,
bro.
wait. You see now, Gally, now you listen. You can't leave me on like this. He kissed his best, what? He kissed the best friend or his best friend's wife?
He kissed his supposed best friend, and the friend's wife did not know his friend. When you were talking about on the DL? Yeah. His friend's wife did not know that her husband potentially went both ways. And I asked him, because I'm like, okay, so that's the conflict within him, why he is acting like a freaking loon. And I'm like, okay, so it's 2000, what was it at the time? 2015. I'm like, it's 2015. There are support groups. If you're struggling with your sexuality, you really can get help. So going into a relationship with full integrity, knowing who you are, you can bring some crap with you because you've lived for a while. You're coming from an environment, that person's coming from an environment. But if you are not bringing respect, honesty, and truly the truth of who you are to that, I am probably going to leave. And here's the other catch.
My mom's statement. Go ahead, because I'm about to say, if you don't know the truth of the truth, that's my mom's thing. And the truth of the truth.
At the end of it, if you are bringing me lies and deceit, and this is how I know I've never been in a relationship, because even you said, when you and Alaire separated, you both found your way back to each other. Them jokers go into the witness protection program. I never see them again, and the saddest part is, I do not do casual relationships. So every guy
Yeah.
I've been involved with, I knew them for a while. And for that level of deceit and lying to continue on that level is insane. So I don't trust my judgment anymore, and I need to get back to a place where I trust me to even accept going out with somebody for a cup of coffee.
Right. No, and you know what? I think that we need to continue this dialogue because you said some other things that are really, really important. But I know that we are crunched for time today, so I'm just going to make a note of it to have further context added, so we can talk further about the loss of relationship or the perceived loss of relationship and how perhaps you find your way back from a lost relationship.
Even if it's with yourself. Yeah.
Right. So I think that you hit on a few things that I would really like to continue to explore because I think that you being single, me being married, me being single before, and understanding all of that and remembering the single life, and don't let Alaire hit this part because I do think about the single life periodically. But the point is that I am married and yet you are single, and I think that your perspective and my perspective are really great points to have further contact and talk about. So that's my 2 cents.
All righty. Well, this has been fun, sitting in the Lost and Found at the library, hopefully not disturbing too many people, but I do like this room and this concept of it. So with that, thank you everyone for tuning in, and by all means, we'll continue the discussion on relationships next time in Lost and Found, and we hope you have some input for us and can, as married people or single people, give us your thoughts. Let us know. Is marriage even a thing anymore? How do you keep yours together? And if you're single and you are hopeful for marriage, what are you doing to actually get yourself to the point of getting out there again? I'm not a Tinder person, and dating on social media scares the crap out of me. So with that, I'm going to say welcome to the Lost and Found, and thank you for stopping by.